What's going on, family? This is Kevin here with the Elite State of Mind podcast. Jesse, how you doing today, man?
Man, I'm great. How you?
Doing well, doing well. So,
Good,
family,
good.
what we're going to get in today is a topic I heard Jesse speak about probably 5, 10 years ago, and started out with the saying E squared. That being said, it means emotion creates motion.
Good.
So, Jesse, my question is, where did that come from? What was the train of thought in saying emotion will create motion?
Okay, yeah. Um, it was me just thinking as I'm programming. I had to look inside and be like, hey, what really gets me going? And me being able to channel the energy of anger, because anger is energy, but that's a whole other conversation.
Sure.
And when I was playing ball, just being able to say, hey, I can pull from this particular emotion and improve my endurance.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, let me apply this principle to my clients as we train, and which got to the other philosophy of, listen, man, if we're training the session and you don't cuss or cuss me out, we're really not getting there. And so a lot of people were like, well, why would you want to do that? Because that it clicks something in your brain that says, listen, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to fight. I'm going to get a few more reps. And so, that emotion causes you to move.
Sure. Now, the thing is, when we talk about emotion creating motion, obviously, in the world of, personal training or being an athlete, a lot of people, probably going to gravitate towards the side of, are my emotions good? Are they a positive? So therefore, my body will perform, in a positive manner.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that maybe we don't know how to do, like you said, in drawing from anger, is if our emotions are in a negative state.
Mm-hmm.
If I am maybe in a depressed state or something of that nature, a lot of times some people will draw back. Some people will they can still function in society, but then the motion of their life, they sometimes will cease to exist.
Yeah.
As the definition of time, they don't continue on that. How is it possible for us to channel that sometimes negative emotion
Mm-hmm.
and maybe bring it back to a positive?
I think in using the formula, it causes you to actually process. To process is you actually doing the work, right? So one session you come out, we do some deadlifts, and we do 5 too many, and you cuss. And then it's afterwards, like we said, we have one person cuss us out and walk out of the door.
Sure.
Okay? And then the next day come back and be like, all right, well, I thought about it. It's the process, right? Processing of the emotions that'll cause this, what would deem to be a negative, turn to a positive. And the work continues. And we want that work and that cycle to keep happening.
Right. So it's not a finite point from A to B. It's more cylindrical.
Oh yeah.
As it all comes around in the circle of just the emotions going around. And obviously, as we know, emotions being a chemical reaction, they change.
Mm-hmm.
Every few seconds.
Every 15.
So I think it's crazy, and you see it a lot, in kids that 1 minute they can be just like the world is over because their toy fell behind the couch and they can no longer get to it.
Right.
And then 2 seconds later, they're back to being on top of the mountain because they got a plastic tube, and now they're playing lightsabers again.
Right.
But as adults, sometimes we lose the ability to move on from a negative that quickly, and it makes us stagnant, and we don't stay in motion, and we just continue to to bog down.
Emotional plasticity is what we could deem and say that has to be. Like you said, children mentally and emotionally are resilient. Somewhere along the line, we put that down because, Jimmy or whoever says it's not, listen, you need to stay in your state and do that. No. We have to be able to bounce back, right? To process and bounce back, because life it's up and down. Like we know this to be true. Like if we study these kids, we see that. Them trying to walk, they fall, so they stop trying to walk.
They keep going.
They don't. So when do we lose that?
Man, I don't. I would probably say you probably lose it somewhere before you start going to school, or somewhere in your first few years of school. For in my opinion,
Okay.
just because you're taught so much to become sedentary. As you go to school. I remember, my daughter, when we took her to her first preschool program. One thing we loved about it was that they would get there and they would play.
Yeah.
They would play,
Yeah.
the energy would be going, and it wasn't just how it is for her now. You get to school, if she eats breakfast at school, it's normally some sort of, a cereal or something, right? So a
Yeah.
carb
Yeah.
hits the body, and now I have all this, super energy,
Yeah.
but I just have to sit at my desk and just be in my box. And I'm just like, oh no,
Yeah.
what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I don't get to expend any of that energy
Mm-hmm.
till we, get to go outside and play.
Yeah.
And then the further you matriculate through school, you don't even, when you're in high school and any of that, you're not going to recess anymore.
Yeah. No.
But that same thing has happened. And so now, like you said, I just stay in that state. How do we combat that?
Again, through the process, being mentally aware of what's going on, of where we're at the time. We all know, all of us living know that we were designed to move, that we
Sure.
feel better when we're moving. But we buy into the overarching theme that as an adult, adulting is not moving. Adulting is sitting at the desk.
True.
Adulting is not smiling, not laughing, not drinking water.
Yeah.
The thing that you love to do as a kid. Adulting is the opposite of that. So why would we prescribe to no longer taking care of ourselves and being happy?
That's a good question. I think it's and we'll get into this a little bit later, but I
Yeah.
think it goes into, if I can create people to become drones or robots, then I can get them to do what I want them to do
Mm-hmm.
a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
I can program the system
Yeah.
to do whatever it is I need it to, because kids are free thinkers.
Yes.
As a
Yes,
child,
they are.
you just might wake up one day, and I remember my daughter, she woke up one day, all right, I'm gonna get across the monkey bars,
Yeah.
and we're outside and she does it.
Yeah.
Right now, she
Yeah.
ain't double back.
Right.
Now she's a little bit afraid. But that day she woke up, I'm gonna get across the monkey bars. Or one day she's, I'm gonna design dresses.
Yeah.
And then she wants to go, and she just always wanting to go and do so many of these other things. But like you said, as adults, we become so ingrained in the system of wake up, work, sleep, wake up, work, sleep.
Yeah.
And then I think the one of the bigger issues is, because you do that, it begins to take validity away from your emotions, away from your
Yeah.
the things that you are experiencing, because you are taught to suppress them, because you have to continue to press through.
Yeah.
The one thing that's so big out there now is mental health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And obviously for us growing up, if you said you had mental issues, you were more likely getting beat.
You got a backhand.
Yeah, and you get rid of that stuff. You was getting beat and getting some holy water sprinkled on you. But I think now, I'd like to hear what you had to say about this. That the mental health awareness being so big, I think it's going to be great for the younger generations.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think what helped, I remember I read a book, I can't remember the author, I have to find it. It was a book on emotional intelligence. And I think I read that book probably about 5 years ago. It really made me take a look at it and see how important it is to tap into emotions. Man, we finna get a little deep. To tap into the emotions, and where a lot of men say, or back in the day, growing up, they would say, "Listen, emotions is not. It's not for you."
Oh, the boomers.
Yeah, right. It's not a thing that you do. But as I went and looked and I studied, being a whole man and embracing all of manhood means that I am attuned to my emotions. It doesn't mean I'm emotionally driven, right? Because no one who is successful or is going to be great at anything is emotionally driven. They are in
Sure.
control of their emotions. So
Right.
in order to be in control of something, you have to be aware of it. So
Very
the
true.
more aware that we become of our emotions, then our intelligence also increases. So
Right.
this is the premise behind emotional intelligence. So like you said, it's great that now mental health is to the forefront
Yeah.
because we're able to have an open discussion and conversation about, it's okay that you don't feel good today, right? I'm able to tell my son it's okay you don't feel good today. Now, are we going to stay there? No,
Right.
because we control that.
Right.
So, what do we do? All right, so we're going to talk about why you don't feel okay today. What
Right.
is it? Let me ask you a few probing questions, right? That's emotional intelligence. To have a conversation with someone and say, man, my bro was off today. Let me ask not intrusive questions, but questions that allow him to open up. So therefore, we can process together where we're going, where he's at, and where we need to go. So
Okay.
I walk alongside with him,
Right.
right?
To give aid, to give help,
Yeah,
in the situation.
yeah. Not just, you man, you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You
Figure
you
it
got
out.
it, right? No, no. You don't always have it, even if it's just for a moment.
That
It's
is
okay
very true.
for you as a man not to have it for the moment. All right,
Right.
that's all right. So we got to be able to have these conversations to create these safe spaces for one another. But again, that takes emotional intelligence.
Very, very true. One thing I want to talk about is, I read the book Outwitting the Devil
Mm-hmm.
by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
And, the book basically it's Napoleon Hill. And what he's, saying is he had a conversation with the devil. Whether
You better
you
watch out.
believe in that or not, or you can take it as him having a conversation, with him, with his inner self.
Mm-hmm.
But through the book, as he's asking the devil how he, gains control over people or, gets, power over people. One thing we talked about earlier was, people getting in that routine.
Mm-hmm.
And, the person, speaking on behalf of the devil or the devil in that book is saying that I need people to become drifters. And then one thing he also talks about is, I can keep people from wanting to use free thought, through the method of fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So obviously, fear being, an emotion, it is something that is, very powerful. And, it's for me, how do we continue to, like you said, you talk to your son and you're helping him, navigate his emotions. How do, because for, going back to children, they're fearless.
Right.
When,
Right.
they'll go pick up, an anaconda because, they really have no knowledge of, that this
That
may
is
hurt
danger.
them.
Right. Right.
Right.
Right.
They'll stick their hand in the fire
Yeah.
because they don't know that the fire is,
Who
going to
knows?
burn them.
Yeah.
As we grow up, you could have fear of starting a new business,
Mm-hmm.
of starting a podcast, of
Yeah.
changing career fields.
Yes.
Because, yeah, I can sell you the dream
Mm-hmm.
of what it's going to look like 2 to 3 years down the road.
Yeah.
But then if I tell you the truth,
Yeah.
on the front of it,
Mm-hmm.
that you're going to struggle
Yeah.
for that first, 6 months, a year.
Yeah.
2
Yeah.
years. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to struggle in whatever this is you're endeavoring to do.
Yeah.
But are you going to overcome that fear and to press forward, and get to, where your goal is at the end? As adults, like you said, is it, if I don't have, maybe some people in my corner, or maybe I have, just went through life getting it by myself,
Yeah.
what do we do to then teach ourselves, one, to let people in, which for me is tough.
I feel you.
I mean, one,
I
it's
feel
just
you.
not how we were raised.
Right. Right.
Something comes up, you deal with
You
it.
handle it. Yeah.
But two, so how do we let people in, and then how do we, overcome, that fear of letting people in, and then just the fear of whatever it is we're facing, so that we can, go be better.
Okay. To let people in, first you got to open the door for yourself. It's about dealing with you from an honest place and perspective. Like you said, that's huge for you to be able to say, hey, I know me. Something going on. Listen, I'm not going to come over here. Hey, can you?
Right.
Nah, I'm going to figure it out. Right. And to understand that, hey, depending upon who you're dealing with, that could be detrimental to the ability of you and them to relate to one another.
Sure.
Because for whereas, like you said, we were taught to deal with it, other people, were taught to open up, be available. And so if you reject that help from them, then it comes to them as an offense, and you can ruin a good relationship because of that. And secondly, how to get over the fear is we attack it through planning.
Sure.
Because like you said, fear is a chemical emotion. It changes every 15 seconds. So understand any emotion changes every 15 seconds because it's chemically based, and because of that, that means either I can add to it,
Yeah.
or I can allow it, assist it to dissipate. So, through action, fear is conquered, right? So it has to be a plan that we set forth, an intentional one. And that, okay, yes, I've sat down and I've written this thing out. I got my boxes and I'm going to check each one and go through. So therefore, if I'm still struggling with the fear of, let's say, going into this particular business, then I can always go back at my checklist and say, did I or did I not do step 1?
Okay.
Did I do step 2? Step 3? If not, okay, the next day I got to go back through and I got to do it again, right? To make sure that I'm doing all that I can to get over this and to deal with it, and not just try to sweep it under the rug. Oh, I guess I'll go be average because it's safe.
It is safe to be average for a time, but there's a detriment to being average, for sure. One thing, in it, and obviously going back to, being that emotion creates motion. It seems that obviously when our emotions are when we're hitting at 100, the sun is shining. It's it's great days. I got money in the bank. Then it's easy for me to take emotion. And my emotions are then going to drive my motion.
Right.
But then, when it's cloudy day or it's everything's not, hitting great, then I have to let my emotions drive me back into a good place of emotion.
Yeah.
One thing that I think, you and I both had to learn, growing up through, sometimes our own brand of foolishness,
Right.
is that we internalize, our emotions. And, one thing you talked about, as men, if you were raised by, the baby boomer generation, you were definitely taught to do so. And sometimes it's okay, because sometimes you just sometimes you do have to work things out.
Yeah. For sure.
But if you internalize those things, then it's just, as you said, that chemical reaction is going to combust. Whether you then, become volatile, or then you just kind of spiral, out of control in any, in any way, shape, form, or fashion, and it leads itself to maybe some of your vices,
Oh, yeah.
taking over in your life.
Oh, yeah.
Has that, have you ever had that happen to you, and if it did, what brought you back? Was it, just self-awareness? Was it, somebody? I know for me, it was often, every year on my birthday, I would go and I would talk to Encolada.
Yes.
Yes. We would sit there and we would speak. And, one thing, that I loved about her is, and nobody could say it quite like her,
Right.
but she was like, son, you suck.
Yes, she would.
You suck at life right now. And I need you to do better. And then, from there, she wouldn't just say you suck.
Right.
Then it was, okay, now, did you hear me?
Yeah.
Now now here's our plan.
Here, what are we going to do about it?
Let's come up with a
Love
plan.
that. Yeah.
And then, when I see you again, like you said, we check these boxes.
Yes.
I need you to have X, Y, Z done. So we can make sure we're not still in this stage of suckiness.
Yeah. For me, it was the lack of communicating outside of myself.
Ooh.
See, I communicate well with myself, right?
Sure.
Learning how to, like you said, that's one thing Clara really, really taught was how to take a true self-evaluation and to process step by step what it is, why you got there, um, what's the next step to get away from that, and then outline that plan. I was great with doing that myself. And what was funny is because, over the course of time, I've done a lot of public speaking,
Sure.
right? So being able to communicate, not a problem. But to communicate on an interpersonal level, I sucked.
Yeah.
I sucked. I wanted to figure out like relationship with the bros, no good, with my siblings, no good, with significant others, no good. I'm trying to figure out, well, what's wrong with them? Well, it's
Right.
not them.
Right.
It's always going to be you. So the
Sure.
first thing you do is look at yourself. So when looking at it, like I said, as I'm going through, I'm studying, I'm looking, I'm like, oh, okay, communication. Taking several communication classes, in college, and the sender receiver model, understanding like, oh, I have to get better at relaying my message to those who are in my life.
Okay. Do you feel that when you did that, when you began to, be a better communicator, that it lended yourself to being able to quickly work through, negative emotions or to heighten, positive emotions. And then, as we know, the energy is never lost nor destroyed, but transferred
Transfer.
from one body to the next
Yeah.
to then share, that good energy, or as they say now, the good vibes,
Yeah. Yeah.
with, with others that you were trying to do that with.
Mm-hmm. It was both. So um, as I became better at relaying messages, I got even better at receiving them.
Mm.
And I think that is should be the focal point whenever you're relating and communicating with another person. Put the focus on receiving their message.
Very true.
Outside, people say it's all about getting your message across. Woo.
Right.
No,
Right.
no. Be better at receiving their message, because when that happens, then your relationship is going to get better with that person, and the trust is built to communicate freely, and that's why communication will oftentimes suck because you know us being how we were, people were extremely guarded about,
Right.
oh man, this guy's going to react in a negative way.
Sure.
I'm about to get some negative energy if I say these words or this thing or give my true thoughts or feelings, and I just don't want to deal with that because it's a big ball of negative.
Right.
No. So, like you said, when able to recognize that, and then fully aware that I have to control my energy in dealing with another person.
Mm.
And so, if I care about them, then my energy has to come from a place of love. We understand. We'll talk about it again. We talk about it all the time, man. There are different types, but if it's a brother, then regardless of what we're talking about, I have to receive his thoughts, his emotions in love, and then communicate that back. And a lot of times people think, oh man, I'm a man,
Right.
right? The reality is, if you're really embracing manhood, then you're going to deal with your brothers with an insurmountable amount of love.
True.
Understanding that, hey man, I done messed up too.
Yeah.
Let me just take off any preconceived notions, any of that. Let me just give you a place and space to say what needs to be said, man.
Right.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I feel that. Like you said, it's definitely not something that I think especially in the black community, that we as brothers don't. We're not a safe space,
Right.
for each other
Right.
to sit down and communicate. And like you said earlier, just be like, man, it's been rough. These past couple of days or these last couple of weeks. Through fear of somebody taking your information and gossiping with it.
Right. Right.
Turning your already negative emotion
Mm-hmm.
into something even more, because the next thing you know, they didn't call 3 or 4 people and ask back to you, that what was said about you.
Yeah.
But before we get out of here, Jesse, the thing that I want to ask is, what advice would you have for people that are looking to, make sure that they can always stay on that, cylindrical circle of allowing their emotion to create motion in a positive manner?
Number one, just be aware of you. Um, Doing your very best to get to know you. Knowledge of self is huge. And not just embracing your good, but also embracing the bad, the negative stuff that you have inside of you.
For sure.
It made a huge difference
Yeah.
in me and allowing myself to grow and just to be able to be honest. Listen, as a kid, I had a terrible temper.
Right.
I had
Right.
to learn that, like when Dad was telling me, like, listen, man, if you don't do nothing, get control of this temper. All he was saying was get control of your emotions, right? So being aware of yourself is going to aid you in the process, in the journey, because it's a journey.
Right.
It doesn't stop in this particular journey of allowing your emotions to create motion. Get to know yourself.
I think for me, like you said, first is getting to know yourself, and then once you learn you, one thing that I have done, especially over these past couple of years, is sometimes you do have to guard your energy, and it's not a slight on other people
Right.
when you may have to take a step away,
Mm-hmm.
when you may have to, and phrase I use is clear the airspace
Mm-hmm.
for a little bit
Yeah.
to kind of take that self assessment
Yes.
and get yourself right. Because if your energy is, as the young people these days say, toxic, um, so
Yeah.
to speak, which I mean, I don't,
I don't
toxic
totally
is
agree.
toxic
Toxic
is
is
a
it. That's a
word.
whole. We'll get on to that one. That's a whole.
But if you feel your energy is toxic, then you need to look at what factors are driving it to be so.
Yeah.
Whether it's internal or external, and then do your best to change those factors. And like you said, look at it through the lens of love,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're dealing with others. But guys, we do thank you for tuning in with us today. Again, our goal is always to listen, learn, and grow.
Yeah.
And we'll talk to you next time.